Cool. Well, welcome everyone. This is the first of our Fictiv hardware series. And so really what we're trying to do with these series, there's many more to come, is really uncover a lot of the truth and learnings for developing hardware products out there today. And so, we're going to be talking a lot about the topic today of lean hardware development and kind of what that means, and nothing better than guys that are in the trenches every day on it. So we'll kind of talk through that a little bit. And then we'll go through some questions. We'll then open up to the audience to kind of hopefully get some feedback there, and hopefully it should be a really good conversation. So I'm Dave Evans. I'm one of the co-founders of Fictiv. We're super passionate about community and hardware development, and we help people build physical products and bring them to market. A lot of familiar faces in the audience. So today, lean hardware development, right? Well, as a lot of you guys probably know the term lean from Lean Startup and Eric Ries, right? It's very common. The idea is this rapid iteration process of, I'm gonna quote him, but what he says is business hypothesis driven experimentation. So it's the idea that iterative product development, that the quicker the turnaround times you can have in each of those iterations is the faster that you can get to market. The faster you can reduce the barriers to entry and the less money that you have to bring on. I think what's really interesting about what the whole book talks about, and Eric specifically, is that in the Lean Startup, he talks about software and services a lot. What he doesn't talk about is hardware development. And a lot of the conversation, what's being talked about today in hardware development is why is it so hard, right? The classic things we hear over and over again is, the quote from like Dale Doherty that you can't spell hardware without the hard part. Right, Maker Faire is just coming up in next weekend, right? Mark Andreessen, the reason they call it hardware is because it's hard, right? These are the typical things we hear. So in these lessons, in these series that we're going to be doing, we want to talk about why it's hard and what we can do about it. So today we're going to talk specifically around lean development and how that applies to hardware and how to not make it so hard. So today we have 4 awesome panelists that we want to talk about this topic on. So we have Massimo from Luna, we have Alex from SoundFocus, Alex again from PetCube, and Chris from Boombatics. I'm going to kind of let them all introduce themselves and a little bit about what their company does, and then talk a little bit briefly about what lean hardware development means for them, and then we'll kind of dive into the topic there. So you want to start, Massimo?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'm the CTO of Luna. Luna is a mattress cover that makes any bed smart. So the wearables market is exploding now, and they're doing an awesome job at tracking how you live during the day. But nobody is actually doing a good job in tracking how you sleep and your biometrics while during 1/3 of your life, which is the time you spend against a big wearable, which is your bed. So we decided to take this approach and build a product that is invisible and tracks your body, manages the bed temperature, and integrates with IoT devices in the home.
Yeah, so Alex?
I'm Alex Selig. I am CEO of SoundFocus, and we're giving people superhuman hearing. And initially that means enhancing the devices you use every day to make them work better for you.
Cool, thanks.
My name is Alex. I am founder and CTO of PetCube, this gadget that allows you actually to stay connected with your cats and dogs when you are far. So we did our Kickstarter campaign in 2013. We passed through the acceleration program called HACS in China, Shenzhen. Right now we are a team of 30. We're divided into 3 parts of the world. Ukraine, where like our R&D team is, San Francisco here, and Shenzhen, China.
Cool, thanks. And Chris?
Hi, my name is Chris McElroy. I'm a co-founder at Boombatics and VP of Product. We manufacture and design ultra-portable speakers for the active lifestyle. And we've been based out of San Francisco since 2010.
Cool. So 4 awesome hardware startups, right? All in different realms around consumer products. And so what we want to talk about a little bit, and we'll just go briefly through it, is talk to me a little bit about what this idea of lean means to you guys. Like, how do you, we all know the book, we all know the methodology being in the Valley here, but what does it mean to your company specifically and maybe talk a little bit about that. Let's go back around. We'll start with Chris to start, and we'll come this way.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So our company was really founded around the idea, the problem. What if we had some music and we found ourselves out skiing, mountain biking, just out in the far realms of the world, just wishing we had music. And the place where we felt it the most was riding our bikes in the city and realizing that riding with headphones is not just dangerous for yourself, it's dangerous for other people around you. And what we set out to do was create an ultra portable speaker that you could seamlessly just clip on and ride with. And when we started off in 2010, we had hacked a vinyl toy, put a speaker into the toy and a Motorola walkie-talkie clip on the back. And now that was great, but we, with the resources we had, which was just scraping together some family and friends money, we really didn't have what it took to sit down and either hire engineers to design the state side. So
But that was your MVP, right? That was like the first product that filled the vision you had.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the MVP, and what we did from that point on is took this MVP and started working to find a manufacturer in China that was small, that was looking to kind of grow with us and really leverage their engineering resources. And so we launched our first product, the SB1, in 2010, which is a hardwired skull-shaped speaker. You might have seen a few of these floating around, but the following year we set off to design a little cleaner speaker. And the way that we sort of define our lean hardware development is our product is defined by the form. A lot of our competitors, audio companies that are designing speakers, they usually set off to design the best sounding speaker and then fit it into a package. And we sort of set off to design this form that would be friendly, encouraging you to take it with you, rugged, and really this ultra portable form. And from there, worked with our CM to fit the best sounding speaker we could into it and to define the basic Bluetooth function.
That's sweet. And we'll dive into that process a little more. Alex, do you want to talk about Fictiv and what that means for a little for you guys?
Yeah, so I will try to keep it short because there is standard saying for lean startups, like stop coding, go to meet your customer, right? I think the same with hardware, except you need to do in parallel. You need to meet your manufacturer because that's where the main obstacle could appear probably. And that's what we did. So we didn't go with CM. We built our own team of mechanical engineers, software engineers, hardware engineers, and then we went to China to this acceleration program, pass through it, find the right factory, build the relationships. Then start production. So the main point here is go and meet your manufacturer, your factory.
Cool. And I think that's a really interesting process, which we will dive into, kind of these different ways to develop it. Alex, I know you guys have a unique story yourself, so tell us a little more.
So I think the leanest way to develop hardware is not to build hardware at all. I say this because the first prototypes we built were all in software. So I actually built iPhone apps that enhance your hearing and got it into people's hands. So lots of our customers already owned iPhones, and I was able to get lots and lots of feedback, well before validating and vetting the concept, well before I even touched hardware. I went so far as actually building a music player app, which you can download in the App Store today, and launching that and validating that our audio processing actually worked. So from that perspective, it'll with very little cost, a two-man team, we were able to reach hundreds of thousands of people. And that data is stuff that's now influencing what we're building from the hardware perspective. So really starting with the scratch, literally the first code I wrote, I'm not a developer by any long shot, but I am able to hack together pieces and get something up and running. That first code took me 2 days. And 2 days I was able to vet that this thing actually worked and not spend 6 months running around spending money on things that don't work and don't make sense for customers.
Sounds pretty lean to me.
Yeah. So.
Massimo, you want to kind of come back with that with your guys'?
Sure. Actually, our experience has been kind of similar. I have to say that my background is in software, so I'm very familiar with lean product development. And my advice has always been, my mantra has always been, never don't build the product and fake it till you make it. So when you talk to early adopters, pretend that you have an awesome product that is already built and full-featured so that you can see what their reaction is. And what we did is we split our value prop in smaller things that we could validate. And we went out and looked for other products that were probably solving part of those value propositions. And we gave those in the hands of early adopters and told them how to use them. And we collected their feedback on what were the biggest pain points with those products.
Got it.
And then kept enhancing them a little bit by giving them other products that were a little bit better to see what their reaction was.
So you actually broke your problem down into multiple pieces and then said, hey, what's wrong about this, this, and this, and can I build something that encompasses all of these things?
Exactly. So we were looking for really what were the core use cases and what were the biggest pain points for our users. Like for example, one of the features of our product is temperature management when you're in bed. So to validate that, we took very old, dumb heating pads, and we gave them to a bunch of people that never tried them. And we found that, for example, nobody remembered to turn them on.
Interesting.
So then we
they
gave
just sleep on a cold
exactly. So then we gave them a timer and told them set it to 8 p.m. and see what happens. So we have been building this, and we discovered a lot of things. For example, one of our target customer is couples because they fight because the man likes to sleep colder while the women women likes to sleep warmer. So we found a lot of core pain points that we are addressing.
But I think that's really similar to what Chris is talking about too, where you guys took existing thing, whether it's a Motorola clip on a walkie-talkie, stuck it on something and said, does this function well for the use? You know,
of course.
To me, that is lean, right? It's saying that here's the problem we're trying to solve. Whether we do it in software beforehand or we take existing stuff off the shelf, then how do we actually apply that to the problem we're trying to solve for our products today? And we see this over and over again with a lot of the companies we develop with. So I think playing off that a little bit, I'd love to dive into the prototyping from you guys as well on that. Sure, we have this methodology for lean. We have this way of thinking about it that use stuff off the shelf or write software beforehand, but you know, at the end of the day, it's hardware, right? We still have to go from digital to physical some way. So maybe Alex from Fictiv, starting with you, you know, what's your philosophy for bringing that product to market? You talk a lot about, you know, dealing with the manufacturers from day one. You guys, you know, were able to be in China from day one with Accelerator, you know, and going through one of the best hardware incubator programs out there. Are very unique anyways. And so really curious on what that philosophy looks like and how that tied into your product.
Yeah, but I think the philosophy, it starts way earlier.
Okay.
I mean, probably I called it like you should act like a child, because by this I mean like you need to continuously creating something, like not focusing on something but creating something. So from the idea of Fictiv, when it started, because I came up with an idea of this device when my dog Rocky, he was barking a lot, and my neighbors they even threatened to call the cops on me because it bothers them, and I need some kind of solution, and that's how the prototype starts, because I started building, like, I bought a cheap webcam from the market, tripod mounting, cheapest servos, laser pointer, the favorite toy of my dog Rocky, and I duct taped everything together, and that was a solution. So actually,
so why didn't you just sell, 8,000 of duct tape, laser pointer? That sounds great.
That's a problem of shipping, probably.
All right, we'll get to that.
I wish I can do
series.
this, but we still need to pass all this through the manufacturing process. So yeah, by the prototyping and the philosophy, I can say that in a way, if you're acting like a child, you're thinking and creating at the same time, and this is the most important.
Interesting. Cool. And Chris, maybe I'll move on to you afterwards. You talk a lot about how form was so important that, if you look at your competitors, it's the best sound. We know how to test sound, right? We have a lot of equipment for that. But form is much more intangible. It's a feeling in your hand. So how did you think about that even from day one when you're hacking apart dolls to, the new product you have on the line there, which I see down at your side as well.
Oh yeah. Well, I think what Alex said is really interesting. Just thinking about like the child's mindset, or really asking like the most elementary questions and discovering what you're going to be doing. And when the product that I think we really developed, that's our workhorse product, which is the Rex. It's a hexagonal clip-on speaker. Was, in defining the form of that, there was a bit of sketching to see what would look and feel rugged. That's what we wanted our brand to be, sort of this younger, urban, rugged look. And we knew that, like, perhaps following the industrial design of, more traditional brands wouldn't show that we're trying to break the mold. So the sketch was just kind of a really cool concept. And when we first started CAD modeling it, we realized that the sizing was just not right. And there was something about the size that had to appear that if it was sitting on a table, you would be encouraged to just pick it up and take it with you. And if it was too big, you would look at it and leave it on the table. So the way that we discovered that ideal form was actually just throwing the computer to the side, going down to Blick, getting a block of clay and a knife, and sitting there and just whittling a little piece of clay till it fit in your hand in like this awesome shape. And we took that and took out some calipers and measured it and changed the CAD drawing, and that's the product you have today.
I think it's pretty cool. We talk a lot about going from digital to physical, but the whole idea of what we're hearing a lot of here is like, well, you actually start at physical, then you go to digital, and then you go back to physical as well, and it's this iterative cycle of going over and over again. Alex, maybe you can share some of yours. I know you have some good South Park stories there.
There's definitely that gut check that you have to constantly be doing. Let's say you're making a guitar. If you suddenly make that thing so heavy that the person's neck snaps off, right, when they pick up this thing, you won't, like, you're thinking about all the features and functionality, but if you don't just mock it up and say, like, okay, I'm adding this much weight to this thing, my neck hurts, right? You could do that like that, right? Just grab a jug of milk and attach it to a string and hang it around your neck and see how, kind of know how heavy it is, right? So, there's certain things where that kind of like gut check mentality is something we've been doing. And actually, I would say, having rapid prototyping, this 24-hour turnaround, whether we end up buying a Flash Forge in-house and then using a lot of Fictiv services to really basically be able to go like, okay, I need a higher resolution validation, we're just going to hit print and to get that in our hands rather than squawking about it for 2 hours about like whether this fillet makes sense and this speaker grill is going to actually work. And so it's amazing about that, like going back and forth and being able to really hand it to people. Like our gut check is we go to the park that's nearby our office and hand the product to people and say nothing. And then they either smile and they're happy or they're like, and then we ask them what that first reaction was. And half the time, like that first reaction is hugely valuable to us. So your product will be super ugly. Like hand it over to people, and if you're in the hardware world, hand it over when it is still duct tape and a laser pointer on a tripod you put together, and see what the person's reaction is. Because the less resolution you have, the more they will imagine and dream what your product can be. The higher the resolution is, then they're going to be like, oh, I don't like this color white, and you're like, it's not even painted. Like, what are you reacting to, right? You want to have the resolution at the level of feedback you're looking for. So if you want just like really higher order, like should we be building speakers or microphones, or get something that's like the duct tape level of prototype, right? And if you want something that's like, do you like this speaker grill or that speaker grill, then get a much higher resolution prototype. But definitely choose the resolution for the level of feedback you're looking for. I always bias towards less resolution because it's more likely to get genuine feedback. Once they think you've put too much time into it, they will reserve their feedback because they're worried they're going to offend you. Yeah. So when it's duct tape, they're like going to be like, they clearly, there's nothing here to make them offended by, so I'm going to keep talking. So I think that's something really important to think about.
Massimo, I'm sure you have some stuff to add there.
Yeah, I can talk about the most exotic part of our product, which is the soft goods.
Yeah.
And we have been doing all our prototyping from a one-man show,
Yeah.
a small prototyping shop that has been doing the stitching for us.
Cool.
And before finding the right texture, our product is strange because it's designed to be invisible
Right.
and to disappear in the bedroom.
Yeah.
So for us, the core part of the shape and the colors and the idea of our product is the user experiences of when the customer opens up the box and takes the product out,
Yeah.
and when you change your bed sheets.
Because you never see it.
You never see it. So when you see it, you have to be proud of the product you bought,
Yeah.
and that's the real core experience that we did.
So your early prototyping was more about functionality rather than looks at all.
Of course, and but the look is really important because you see it once a week maybe, and the time you see it, you have to remember it. You have to get that type of experience, and it's really hard to test. We did very expensive prototypes of mattress covers, hand stitched.
Hand stitched.
Exactly. I remember the first version of the current version has pluses on top.
Yeah.
So the first version we did stickers that you have to apply manually, each
On top of the
on
fabric.
top of fabric,
Yeah.
and we spent probably 4 or 5 days, all of us, the whole night in the office, sticking pluses to mattress covers.
Oh my god.
And
I don't think that's lean. I'm just gonna throw
I
it
believe
out
we
there,
have
but-
some.
Yeah.
It's not really not lean at all.
Not lean at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a
And
good lesson to learn.
it's a
going
good
forward,
lesson
right?
to learn, and we just used the product ourselves a lot, and we gave it out to people to see what their reaction was. Yeah.
Cool. So I think the next one's following up kind of on the prototyping process there. Alex from Soundfolks, I'm going to start with you, but what is like that tactical execution, right? So you talk about getting out to, the park across the street and talking to those people. So touching on a little bit of like, maybe it's the tools that you use or how you go from digital to physical. I don't want to push one way, but I love your story of like the first products that you tried to sell and getting validations that way. But talk to me about that tactical execution of like, okay, we have this philosophy behind it, right? How do you just go out and do it then?
Yeah, that's great. So we've talked a lot early on, the whole panel's talked about like this really rough prototypes, duct tape, whatnot. And then, it's funny because with apps, there's easy ways to deploy it, like, Hockey app or Crashlytics, or there's a lot of different services that allow you to get apps out to customers before it's on a store and you can buy it. Yeah. And the interesting thing is actually getting a scale of volume on your feedback of your hardware is really important. I can't say enough that a lot of times people will build one-off of this thing and then try to go around to all of their friends and ask them about it, which is a really good phase of the product cycle. But the next phase is really getting up to like 30 or 40 people and getting them to use it for weeks on end. And what we ended up doing is selling our prototypes, which they knew were prototypes, for real money. So we actually charged people $100 for these headphone adapters that we built, and I packaged them as if you was like off the shelf, as close as I could to, as if you bought this in the store, and literally had the logo, had a nice box, had a little instruction card, and then I just shipped them to people. These are all people that were sort of beta testing our apps before, but they didn't really have any context other than like, this is a thing that should work, and then they would call me being like, I don't understand how to use this thing I just spent $100 on, or it stopped working, the wires are hanging out, can you fix it, right? I got real feedback right away, and the beauty of it is there's actually, companies like Fictiv can really help you, and other processes can help you get to that scale without thinking about it too much, right? 20 to 30 units is a lot of assembly time. I probably spent 2 or 3 days building units hand by hand, but it really gets you real feedback. Because initially you're going to get 1 to 5 people feedback, and then one person says something, that's, all right, 20% of the vote now is towards whatever they just said. When you have 30 or 40 people, the real issues start rising out of the feedback. And things start to happen where that longer field study starts showing you things that you just never knew were issues. Like, all of a sudden you see these really weird use cases. We saw people rubber banding our product to the back of their phones, and we're like, oh, that's really weird. And then we started asking other people whether it was this thing where you need to have a pretty large sample size large is all relative compared to software, right?
Yeah.
Hardware, 30 or 40 to me seems like a large
Massive.
number when you're talking about prototypes that work.
Yeah.
But that was really helpful part of the process. And I'd absolutely recommend selling your prototypes. Like, realistically, you support it better and they'll ask you questions rather than being like, it broke, put it on the shelf, and then never talk to you again. And so that would be kind of a key piece of that puzzle as well.
Massimo, have you thought about something like that, a similar process? You know, you talk about it being invisible. Did you give these to more than just, you know, your significant other to try out first, or what does that look like?
Well, it's hard
Yeah,
because
totally.
Obviously for a product like that it's not easy.
Yeah.
So we built our first beta phase was 15 units.
Okay.
And we used part of the shelf fitting pad and part our own control electronics.
controller on top.
And it was definitely glued together, duct taped,
Yeah.
and we were using laptop power supplies.
Yeah.
And
And were you even digital at that phase? Did you even have CAD of what it
no,
was?
absolutely. We had the digital design of a few boards,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
nothing else.
But nothing
yeah.
else. I think it's a really interesting thing of this whole idea from going from digital to physical, and how do you think about that? You know, I'm a mechatronics guy, so where do I start? I start in CAD, right? That's just where I go as an engineer. But a lot of times I find myself stepping back and saying, don't think like an engineer, like put myself in the customer's shoes. Like how do I solve this problem that we're setting out to go and do? And I think that's interesting, you know, of that first version.
Yeah, and that process helped us realize a lot of things. For example, the fact that our product is invisible. It's hard for people to tell when it's working or not.
Yeah.
And so we added, for example, dim LED light on the external enclosure that turns off when they get in bed, for example, because it can be annoying.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's cool. And Chris, maybe I'll move on to you on the tactical execution of the prototyping. I think you have a really interesting dynamic on like your team and how you think about like that tactical execution, and would love to hear more on kind of what you think about or what you think about like that execution piece really is.
Sure, yeah. And you know, it's great to be sitting here with you, you know, you three who are, your products are so like cool and unique and innovative, and it's, I'm sitting here like, yeah, Bluetooth speaker, probably haven't seen one of those before. So our product is, I mean, it's a very saturated market, and our company's been around for 4 years, and we've got some good sales channels, but we're still making new products, and we need to develop them quickly, and you know, with the circumstances we have. And the cool product that I wanted to highlight today was, this is the BoomBot Mini, which is our super ultra portable speaker, and we'll be launching in June. But when we set out to build this thing, the process was looking at where's it going to fit into the price point, where's it going to fit next to our other products, how's it going to look on the shelf, where we've already sort of built this retail presence. And again, going back to the form, the biggest thing we did with Fictiv was sort of the mechatronics model, which this started off as just 3 lines, and it figured like, that's a cool basis, and then brought that into CAD, and it was nailing down the size of this sort of as a model, and just modeling really quickly to say, okay, if that's sitting next to our sort of main workhorse product, is it going to look like it's better than the main workhorse product? Is it going to look, are people just going to buy the $39 one instead of the $59 one?
Yep.
And in turn, we did use, like, on the digital side of things and sort of on the lean end, some really badass renders to ship out to our sales partners and our guys in the channel who are going to say, I think we could go with that.
Yeah.
So
I think it's a really interesting challenge you talked about by already having SKUs in the market, right? You already have products which you can't even compete against, right? If you're going to come in and bring a product which is cheaper than one you're already selling, how does that compete against your other versions? And I think that's a really interesting approach to like that next gen, and it's pretty cool.
So with the development, it's like with the development of this product, it was very much looking at what are we going to sell it for that's super competitive, and how can we work backwards at a set price to really have a margin that works.
Sorry, but that's pretty innovative. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Alex, you know,
You should get one of these.
Yeah, I will. I'd like to pass to you on like that tactical execution. I think that, you know, from a team perspective on you guys as well, you have a very distributed team. You know, you guys have spent a lot of time overseas. You have, you know, people all over the world, and so we have this lean hardware development process we've kind of talked about. But how do you execute on that as you now shipping your first product and you continue to think about how to continue shipping well and what that next gen might be?
Actually, yeah, we already shipped our 8,000 units, and yeah, it took us 1 year from the moment we finished our Kickstarter campaign till this time. If I would like back forward all this time, I would probably recommend like to go to the manufacturer right away, to just with this duct tape prototype find the most similar product to you and go to them and try to talk like how do they can modify it, because they already did this thing, they already faced a lot of problems, and this probably you can like overcome if you will go with them. Yeah, so just get as much advisors as
get
you
there
can.
sooner, and because that's where you're going to face a lot of challenges. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I always like to ask some macro questions in these settings too, so, and to kind of go down the line here, but what, you know, as an engineer, I'll go back, you know, so pardon me as being the engineer, but we always talk about speed, quality, and price, right? We always want all three, and traditionally you only get two. If you want something that's really high quality and you want it yesterday, you're going to pay an arm and a leg for that thing. And if you want something that's cheap, that also is high quality, well, you're probably going to wait a long time for it, right? Get it manufactured overseas or something. So I'd like to ask you guys how you think about those three aspects maybe, and maybe those aren't the biggest barriers in your hardware development cycle, but what are those, I guess I would say, is like, what stops you from moving faster? From, in the words of like Eric, right, of like having more cycles, like reducing that time, and you know, just like what is that number one thing you can think of? I'll start with you, Massimo.
Yeah, probably it's as usual is choosing the right compromise is the hard things to do. So when you're prototyping, probably you're going for speed, and that's super expensive, especially when you are working with doing prototypes of boards for electronics. So those are very expensive to have in quick turn, and it's really hard having to deal with some suppliers when you are a small startup, because typically they get orders of larger companies and then just push you back.
5 million units.
Exactly. And for the final product, we are trying to go for the highest quality possible. It probably depends on the brand and how much you want to invest in your brand.
So it sounds like you're constantly shifting.
You are constantly shifting.
Interesting. Alex, would you agree to that, or is it different for you and your cycles?
This is kind of a weird philosophy. I think
I love it.
hardware is really freaking expensive.
Yeah.
So if you let costs, like if you say like super high quality and I don't care about cost, you will never ship. Okay, I will guarantee you right now as a hardware startup, no, I shouldn't say that. There will be one out of this 100 startups that will succeed where that is the case, and they'll probably have a deep pocket investor who keeps channeling money back into your pocket when you're spending it. But like realistically, you're gonna have a fixed nest egg of money, whether it's $1 million raised on a crowdfunding campaign or your friends and family round or whatnot. And so I would really argue for figure out your product market fit and then get as fast as you can to market with a product that's acceptable to your customers and start learning right away. Like, to be honest, like the learning doesn't stop when you start shipping your product. That's just the first version of the product, and you got to keep iterating. So the thing is, it can't burn, it can't break, it can't blow up, any of those things that would cause you to die as a company. But definitely, like, think of it as this is just as actually yet another prototyping round when you start shipping. That said, I'm going to be very proud of the product when we ship it, but I would also say, like, really ship MVP. Like, it's going to be painful. You're going to be like, oh, you know, there's like this tooling is like, I could spend another 4 weeks doing it. Ship it, you know? And like, I honestly, like, I keep telling my team that because, you know, otherwise they're going to see this every day you add, like, that's like 13 grand to us or 20 grand to us every day we don't ship. And I try to show them that calculation of like, this is how much sales we're going to have. This is how much the overhead cost us. Like, this is painful, guys. Like, realistically, as a company, can we afford this?
Right. So it's all speed is your number one. If you had to pick one, it's not to undermine the cost.
Yeah,
or
it's
the
sort of
quality.
like find what is acceptable and then run with that.
Yeah.
It's basically the way I describe it.
I think what's really interesting on that approach is we talk a lot about this with our young companies where it's you look at burn rates, right? So when you're looking at that speed, that burn rate it's $10,000 per head per month. That's like your back of the envelope math. So you have 5 people, you're burning $50K just on salaries. So that if there's 30 days in a month, you guys can start doing the math that do you want to pay $100 for that rush fee, or do you want to waste another $1,500 in salary because you didn't get that iteration back quick enough? And that's part of it.
Rush fee.
Yeah. Yeah. Alex, I'll go to you, and you guys were overseas, so maybe it's a little different, but.
Yeah, it's definitely cheaper than 10K for engineer there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with Alex. So it's really, you need to ship as fast as possible. So we promised to ship on May 2014, I guess, and then we ship 6 months later. And once I was in China and we ran out of money, and we already have a team of probably 10 people, so we need to make it like a tough decision to cut expenses or cut the team. So thanks God, all the team says okay, we can go with cutting expenses. But it was a tough time, and the one thing I learned about this was actually the quote from Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn. Actually, this quote helped us to ship the product, and he said if you are not ashamed of product you launched it too late. So just shipped it.
That goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
That's interesting. We definitely shifted as a company when we did our Kickstarter campaign. I think we promised March of 2013, and we realized that we were going to run into some delays, and we also realized that we didn't do our battery, air, and sea freight testing on time. So we had a bunch of units, and China's customs were like, we're not going to put that on a boat or a plane until you get this tested. So there are a few delays, and the speed was a really important factor, but it's really shifted today with a product like ours where we're targeting 14 to 18-year-old kids who are very price sensitive. We have to really look at the price and sort of work backwards from there. Like, what's the best Bluetooth module we can get in a product that costs under $10 to manufacture? Like, where does that all fall into play? How big of a battery can you get? So as much as you want that 12-hour runtime, you end up with a 6-hour runtime just so you can really package it in that cost. Because then when we really turn up the volume on production and we start going after all these guys, and you get these distributors who are like, we need 2 points for an MDF, you guys will pay for shipping, and you just play these nickel and dime games where if you don't have enough margin built into your product, then you're shipping something for free, basically.
I think those are really good lessons. A lot of different opinions there. So the last question I'll leave before we open up to the floor for you guys to talk about is, what are some of the trends you guys are seeing today? And I would ask you guys, just quickly, what is not changing fast enough? Like in the hardware development, right? We're back to lean development. What is not changing fast enough, and where are the opportunities that you see, after you've been through either this first rev or this first product cycle, or even as you're in it now? Maybe we'll go back this way. Start with Chris and come back.
Dang, I was hoping I'd go after. I mean, granted, the type of work we're doing is really, heavily dependent on working with CMs. I think that, what I think we could see more of are companies like American companies really leveraging the resources China has, and maybe expanding the infrastructure over there. Like, our team could really benefit from having, perhaps a base, like a team over in Shenzhen, that when we need a tool cut, we don't need, and it might take 35, 40 days, we don't want to wait in line for 20, but rather have guys who we can just get down and cut tools and sort of speed it along on that end of the spectrum.
Cool.
And maybe a 3D printer for PCBs. That would be,
We'll take that one. Alex.
I mean, like, future is like always stranger than we expect. So probably like right now we have this devices, gadgets, smartphones, the internet, but we still don't have like flying cars or hoverboards on the street. And
We have hoverboards now.
they are working not on the streets, unfortunately. Yeah. So yeah, I guess what's interesting, what I want to see here is like all of these devices that we are making. It's definitely easier right now to enter the hardware market. All of these devices will become platforms, and they will share this data, and then all of this data can be like transformed somehow. And this is like really interesting what will happen for the future.
I would actually say the thing that most hardware guys don't talk about is how firmware sucks. And I don't know why. I mean, when I talk to people, everyone's like, oh, it's prototyping or tooling or manufacturing. I'm like, firmware is, like, you're solving the same exact problems. Like, we have people we've hired that literally worked on the same Bluetooth module 4 times. And it's still, like, a pain in the ass. Sorry, pardon my French. Like, it's really annoying to get it all set up and integrated. And it's sitting there like, this is the same, why is this hard, right? And the reality is just getting things to talk to each other smoothly just takes time in debug and finding all the edge cases, and your product has a different RF profile than any other product. Those types of things where that integration and then testing and validation just takes that much more work. And the debugging environments are okay, but not great. Like in SolidWorks, I can hit a DFM button and it is like, whoop, and it tells me where my problems are. And I don't see that same, at least in the environment we're working with my team. There's not a click and there's all this red errors of all the code you've written in terms of like edge cases, or, you know, hey, if you localize these strings, like your code's gonna blow up. You're like, oh, okay. So, you know, that type of thing I think is really important to, if somebody can make leaps and bounds in terms of beyond Adreno, but actually like stuff you can actually manufacture and ship with, that would be awesome.
Pretty cool.
lean firmware development.
Lean firmware.
Yeah.
Maybe that's V2 of the next season. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I hear a couple
Yeah.
for that.
Well,
Massimo.
I have to say that definitely electronics prototyping is super painful, and firmware development is horrible. Like, we are spending most of our time in. We're not hiring firmware developers. I have a B2B software as a service background, and the biggest problem is that firmware till now has been built for products that were not connected to the internet. So software inside products has never been really updated that often. So most firmware is always designed to just work and not to be maintained. So we're missing tools, definitely. And most chip manufacturers try to lock you in with their own platforms. Most of them are horrible. There are few that are easier to work with.
Yeah.
And you have no visibility. And if you pair this with the electronics prototyping, because they have to work together, it's super painful. I have to say that that's the worst experience.
Evil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's awesome. I want to start by thanking them, and then we'll open up questions. Thank you, guys. And now, I just want to open up to the floor. Just raise hands. We'll start over there first. Yeah.
Well, thanks, guys. So I come from the open source software world, and so I was wondering, as part of the lean development process, what kind of resources are there for open source hardware that you guys have either used in your products or that you would recommend for entrepreneurs?
Grab it as you guys want it.
Yeah. I think the fastest thing is Walmart or Target, and like go buy products and rip them apart. I honestly that is, and honestly that is actually almost the fastest way to get prototypes out the door, is just rip things apart, do the method that was talked about here.
Yeah,
it's not really open source as you're truly talking about, honestly, but hardware really doesn't have a huge number of them. That said, there is CAD databases online for almost anything you can think of that's a standard. Like if you want a CAD of iPhone, just like Google it, and there's like some guy has instantly been the first in line to buy it to measure it with calipers for you. those are really useful, especially if you're basing your product off of some other device. I think that's one open source thing that's out there.
I would add on that, I think it is a big movement. I did open source at Ford for 2 years, and that's what I was focused on, and it's all around open source hardware. Eric von Hippel, go read his stuff, MIT professor, I'm a big believer, so go read about the economics of open source. You know, and same thing, that there's a couple companies doing it well, but not enough for sure.
And to echo off Alex too, like using GrabCAD or one of those sites where you can take a look at some, I mean, most of it is kind of marginally good, but there's some cool stuff that you can take, you know, break down and take a small piece of
Repurpose.
and repurpose.
Yeah, it's cool. Cool, yeah. Eric, we'll take you in the front.
Yeah, I'm Eric Osterly, and I'm working on some tools for prototyping firmware using JavaScript, which is not very performant, but helps you get to designs early on and lets you explore more options. And there are actually variants of JavaScript now that will run on embedded, very small and expensive MCUs. But to your point about Bluetooth, that is a big pain point about getting radios to talk to each other. I'm wondering if you guys have played around, any of you, with doing unit testing on your protocols in order to validate as you iterate.
Thank you. Bluetooth guys?
Yeah.
What was the question?
So
So just doing
Oh, sorry.
It was just hard to hear with the.
Sorry, the short question is, what do you guys use unit testing to validate protocols as you iterate wireless designs?
So, yeah. So on our side, we built a hardware abstraction layer, and we are doing unit testing and integration testings for the firmware components, but we don't go to the level of communicating with the chip. We couldn't find a good way other than running the actual hardware with a very stripped down version of the software to testing that. That's super painful. So what we do is we built a very low-level hardware abstraction layer that, and we have different versions of that for different versions of our product and different test rigs. So, yeah.
Similar, Alex, or anything to add?
I can add about the unit tests. So we have like the Wi-Fi inside. We don't have Bluetooth at this moment, but we already ran like 2 batches of production. And since like we iterate our PCB design, we change a bit, and since that we have like different layout a bit. So we need to run this continuous test. What we figured out, like the best way to do is come from the laziness, I think, for developers, because what we've done is we made a physical device that can be touched on the housing of the pet cube. It literally you press this button with a servo motor, and we're running like several pet cubes on the stand from different batches, and we're just doing the automated test, literally automated test with the other robot that pressed the button. And it works for us. It like passed several days, and then passed all the tests, we can ship the firmware.
Cool.
Makes sense.
I'm curious if you think that the lean methodology breaks down in hardware at some point, or if there's a limit to it.
So the question I was repeating, guys couldn't hear it. If lean breaks down in hardware at some, I'll take that because I obviously have strong opinions on it. I would say no. I think that the whole idea behind lean is seeing how much you can compress those iteration cycles to get feedback. So at a fundamental level, all you're trying to do is get feedback on that product that you're trying to build, right? And so that we've seen a lot of different ways to do it. Whether we start in software, you're still getting feedback for that hardware product you're going to develop, and you get to use the same methodologies. Or if you're doing duct tape underneath, the mattresses, or if you're getting in front of customers and saying it's form factors. In the stuff that we see every day, it's all the way from like low res like PLA prints that are sitting on tabletops like what Chris is doing, up to high res like medical grade things that people are testing. Like, can we put these inside of people and do that stuff? So I would say that we span a lot of markets, and I don't think there is a limit to it. But
well, so one thing I would say though is be careful what price point you set your first product at. And I say that because if you set it at a consumer expected price point, you're going to have to hit mass production to ship that thing at a price point you won't lose your entire shirt with. And so if you say like double the price point, you can literally machine every plastic housing of your thing and still ship it with some profit margin, right? So, and that allows you to do much faster, smaller batches of product. You know, you don't have to get $100,000 tooling, right? So lean breaks down when you choose the wrong price for your product, and also the volume is the other piece. So, you know, when you're talking about 10,000 units that have to ship in 2 weeks, well, there's not a lot of lean about that, at least from what I can see. So there is that piece where it's like, there is the development of a product, and like, how do you figure out what you're going to build and why you're going to build it and how it works, and that can be extremely lean. And there's a lot of places you can test that through. And then I think that your manufacturing process, there are a lot of ways to make it leaner, for sure. But I think if you really are careful about how you price your product and who you sell to initially, you can actually even be lean through that. You know, it opens, if you get the right price points and you can sell to a certain set of customers, you can actually build in your backyard. You can have literally hire people off Craigslist to assemble it in your office. And it will be cost effective for you because you actually, you know, can afford to do it. And I wish we'd almost done that, is double the price of our product, and I would have learned so much more building less units and got it, you know, that much further along before getting to mass production.
I agree.
So I noticed, I mean, I work for Indiegogo, so I'm a little biased, but the panel, this is an interesting intersection. The first time I've seen it where you have Kickstarter, Tilt, and Indiegogo.
Yeah.
What are the pros and cons of each platform, just from your perspective?
Well, the final decision to go with Indiegogo for us was because we were able to mirror the campaign on our website. So the number one reason why we ran a crowdfunding campaign was to know more about our early adopters. And by running the campaign on our website, we were able to keep all the investment in PR and marketing that we did by bringing people to our website. But more than that, it's because we were able to use analytics on our website and collect information about our audience, and that's been the most important part, like collecting data about our early adopters. And obviously, the audience you have when you run a crowdfunding campaign is biased, because tech early adopters are probably not your final ideal audience, but it's your customers, it's the first customers you're gonna be dealing with for the first year probably, and it's super important to know them very well. So that was the reason for picking Indiegogo.
So when we made the decision process, the platforms have evolved a lot since then. So even when we were just making that decision, probably July of last year, since then I think Indiegogo has a completely skinnable version of their product that launched. Tilt has updated their product a huge amount. We're on an ancient version of their product, which is awesome because it has the features we want. The new version is different. And then and so for us, the things that why we made the decision we did is, and I would reevaluate all the platforms from these perspectives. And so I don't know which one is best for this at this point. If you want to launch a brand rather than a product, you have to think about getting people to your website rather than to a crowdfunding site. And the reason I say that is I want to sell lots of products to people, and this is just the first of many. If I'm trying to just get cash and I really want people to be behind this thing that we're building, it actually can be very valuable to be on a crowdfunding site, especially if you have a very small team and that credential, there's nothing behind you but this product that you built and this vision. Then it's really good. It fits really well with that mentality. If you're trying to say, hey, we are now going to be the next Jawbone in hearing, you know, that's a different brand you want to build. So launching a brand, we really want to get it on our own website. The second part is actually your checkout experience. So a lot of these websites, when you're doing crowdfunding, you have to choose one of many options or goodies, and that can be positive, but it can also be extremely negative for certain customers. So certain customers really want confidence that they're getting the white unit with the right model, and there's a certain level of confidence where you're not reading through these little paragraphs. And so that was one of the things we want to optimize for, is once they want to buy, it's like that for them to just get the product. And so customizing our checkout flow and being able to actually send people emails if they fail to finish checkout, because sometimes our server would time out or whatever. We could actually send them an email, hey, did you have problems checking out? We ended up, like, I don't know, I probably made 40 grand from just like sending somebody a follow-up email, which I couldn't do from other services. So those are the types of things where, like, I really love the platform for that.
You can do that on Indigo now.
Sorry?
You can do that on Indigo now.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Maybe Alex or Chris.
I wouldn't judge, probably. I wouldn't compare like Indigo to Kickstarter at this time. We started actually our crowdfunding campaign way before the website, the Kickstarter. We started from our own website where we like gathered the pre-orders and all this stuff. And probably why we choose the Kickstarter, because we were like the only one at that time product. Digital toy for pet, and it was like a great marketing tech for us. So successfully crowdfunded first pet product.
Chris,
We did a Kickstarter really it was sort of similar, where we set out to say, when we started building the product, we were like, we have no money, we can't even afford to make a tool, let's go do a Kickstarter, and that's going to make the most sense, and just sort of, I think, leverage like the way that you could find gen pop media to talk about a Kickstarter. It was, in 2012 December, it was a little easier to just get like a TechCrunch spot and stuff.
I would actually add two more things. From a press perspective, they're really, really, really tired of crowdfunding products, to the point where they're like, they were telling us, thank you, you're not crowdfunding, I might actually be able to publish an article about you. And I'm sitting here going like, really? And so it's just because there's so much drama going on. For every startup that succeeds and ships their product, there's like 9 that valiantly, hardware is hard, and they valiantly fail. And so the problem is that after a certain while, everyone's like, I don't want to read about vaporware anymore. And so it's kind of becoming a negative to be crowdfunded. And so that's kind of a challenge for us, because it's a great vehicle for getting our early customers and learning about them. But the other piece I would also say is ongoing sales. So it's really valuable to have that initial pop of 30 days, I got my $1 million. It allows you to make a lot of good decisions up front. I'm doing this quality of tooling, and you make the trade-offs between price, quality, speed. But the ongoing sales, I mean, our initial 30 days, I think maybe that's like 15-20% of our total sales overall since then. I mean, like, we just had like a huge follow-on. It's just random pockets of people finding out about our product, and suddenly we'll see like 100 orders, and it's like that I would be giving up on if I just shut down my sales portal.
So we have a feature called In Demand that mitigates that.
Sorry?
We have a feature called In Demand that mitigates that. So we'll raise your pricing to closer to pre-order pricing. And then if you get a press mention, obviously you can monetize all that traffic.
Cool. So we'll take one more just because of time. Anyone? Yeah, please.
So it seems like there's some sort of competition between iterations and volume. The more iteration, every time you do an iteration, it kind of wipes out previous versions. So I'm curious, what is the most number of products that each of your companies has sold? What volume are you operating at? And what were some of the triggers along the way? For instance, getting a new mold is like a rather step function in terms of cost. What are the triggers that allow you to move up in volume and reduce the frequency of iterations?
So the question is repeated. It's like, what are the triggers that allow you to move up to more volume and increase?
It's really the process you need to use to build it. If you're building by the way, guys, if you have a chance to choose which direction your hardware company goes, go to soft goods, small soft goods. There's no tooling involved. It's gonna like instant and you can get stuff that's perfect quality in like less than a week. Like, I kid you not, we were designing a case for one of our products, and like I mean, this is the same company that makes Nike shoes. And like you can they can draw a shoe and they will give you a Nike shoe that you can put on your foot in a week, right? So like I say this, I obviously haven't been down the soft goods part. I'm just starting to explore it, but everybody is telling me that's like beautiful. You can get to volume like overnight in soft goods. That said, in the hard goods world is probably what I think you're asking about. You know, silicon casting, RTV casting, we were talking about that earlier tonight. That gets you to about 25 units, what I've seen. You can get something with multiple cavities. You can get up to like 100 realistically. Then it stops being price competitive. So then like soft tooling, Model Solution, if you guys haven't heard of that company, they've actually started dropping their prices dramatically on soft tooling. So you can get some stuff that's like really almost competitive with RTV casting. And that can go up to like, they were quoting me like 25,000 parts or something crazy. Yeah. So 25,000 parts at like, you know, $3 or $4 grand a tool or something. So
yeah, aluminum.
So I think you can get to scale. There are different stages depending on what types of parts you want to make.
Yeah, and I think you can also like choose between different ways. For example, with the bed cube, this aluminium part, it's like extrusion. It's not actually mold. So we just found the aluminium profile and then just cut it like a big sausage. So it's kind of tricky. But you know, I want to share you like there is a really good story that happened to me with a tooling factory when I was in Hong Kong. I just woke up some morning and I received a call from the factory, from the tooling factory, and they said like, okay, we're really ashamed, we feel brokenhearted, but our boss were arrested, and like all your molds were confiscated. Oh, no. So and it was like on 25 days after we ordered tooling, so it's like almost done. So yeah, the trickiest part, if you want at least some volumes, just go there and be presented, or find some CM who can be like really inside of the tooling process and yeah,
cool.
To find a way.
Well, thank you guys all for coming out. Really appreciate it.